I remember the way the sun hit the backyard that day, like it was trying too hard to make everything look perfect. There were pink and blue streamers everywhere, cupcakes with little plastic babies on top, and a massive black balloon floating in the center of it all, ready to explode with either pink or blue powder. Everyone was smiling, laughing, taking pictures. But I wasn't really there, not fully. I was standing next to my 6-year-old son, Luca, pretending I was okay, pretending I wasn't drowning in anxiety under the surface. Then it happened. My mother, Vivian, tilted her wine glass toward my aunt, Marlene, and said loud enough for half the backyard to hear, "At least her kid will have 2 parents." She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. And my aunt, not missing a beat, snorted and added, "Not a single mom scandal like last time." I stood still, frozen. My cheeks burned, but I didn't say a word. Not yet. You ever have one of those moments where the world keeps spinning, people keep laughing and sipping mimosas, but you feel like everything just stopped? That was me. People around us didn't flinch. Maybe they were used to it. Maybe they thought I deserved it. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved. But I heard every word like it was branded into my skin, and I wasn't the only one. Luca looked up at me. His hand tightened around mine. His eyes, big, curious, and worried, searched my face like he was trying to read if it was okay to be upset. He whispered, "Mom, are you sad again?" That broke me a little, but I smiled down at him, just enough to hold it together, just enough so he wouldn't see the weight I carried every time I walked into a room where my family acted like my son was some kind of scarlet letter. "Just a little," I whispered back, but not for long, because what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I came prepared today, not for a fight, but for something else. See, earlier that morning, I handed Luca a small white box, wrapped in silver ribbon, nothing fancy. Inside was a gift, a surprise I'd been sitting on for weeks, one I'd been too afraid to share until now. I knelt beside him and said, "You'll know when it's time." He nodded, proud and serious, the way only a 6-year-old can be when he thinks he's guarding treasure. And then we went to the party. Everything was normal, but it wasn't normal. I've been walking into these family gatherings for years like I was already guilty of something, like motherhood was a crime I had to constantly defend myself for, like raising Luca alone made me less worthy to stand beside my cousin Jessalyn, who everyone praised for doing things the right way. Don't get me wrong, Jessalyn's a good person. She's kind and I love her, but she's also quiet, too quiet when things like this happen, and today was her day. So I stayed quiet too, for a while, but then came the balloon, the big moment. Everyone gathered around, phones out, champagne flutes raised. Jessalyn and her husband held hands, beaming, so in love. The balloon popped, and pink powder burst into the air like a firework. Cheers erupted. "It's a girl!" someone shouted. A group hug formed around Jessalyn. Everyone clapped and cried. And just as the moment peaked, Luca stepped forward, holding his little box with both hands. "Wait!" he called out, loud and clear. All heads turned. "My mom wanted to give you 2 surprises today." I swear the entire backyard went silent. My mom looked confused. Marlene looked annoyed. Jessalyn blinked, caught off guard. And I just stood there, heart thudding so loud I could barely hear. Luca walked to the center, carefully placed the box next to the confetti-covered grass where the balloon had burst, and smiled at Jessalyn. I saw Vivian's mouth twitch, maybe about to say something else cruel, but she didn't get the chance. Because that box, that second surprise, was about to change everything. And for once, I wasn't scared of what they'd say next, because this time I had nothing to prove, only something to share. The invitation said, "Casual backyard celebration, bring your smiles." But I knew better. When it came from my family, casual usually meant judgment with snacks. Still, I showed up for Jessalyn. Jess and I were practically raised like sisters. She's my cousin, yes, but our moms are close in that complicated, competitive kind of way that turns holiday dinners into performance reviews. As kids, Jessalyn and I would hide under the table and make fun of them whisper fighting over casseroles and who hosted better birthday parties. She was always the golden girl, soft-spoken, sweet, perfectly agreeable, the one who followed the rules. Went to college, got married, and now she was having her first baby. And then there was me, Amara, 29, unmarried, single mom. I had my son, Luca, from a relationship that fell apart before I even started showing. I didn't cry about it, at least not where anyone could see. I finished school with a baby on my hip and a toddler in daycare. I did the work, paid the bills, stayed out of trouble. But in my mother's eyes, I'd failed the presentation. Vivian is the kind of woman who never wears sneakers unless she's on a treadmill, who irons her napkins and corrects strangers' grammar. She once told me, dead serious, that the only thing worse than being wrong is being embarrassing, and to her, I had been both. Marlene, her sister, isn't much better. She's the one who delivers backhanded compliments with a sugar-coated smile. "You're doing great for someone who had such a rough start," she told me once at Thanksgiving, like I'd survived a natural disaster instead of just raising my kid without a husband. So when I pulled up to Jesselyn's baby shower, Luca buckled in the back seat humming some song from a YouTube video, I took a deep breath before opening the car door. I wore a soft pink dress, not too tight, not too loose, hair curled, light makeup. I dressed for war, basically. Luca popped out of the car, excitement bursting from him like popcorn in a hot pan. He clutched the small white box I'd given him that morning. "Remember," I said, kneeling beside him, "we'll know when the moment's right." He nodded solemnly like I'd just handed him a sacred mission. We walked into the backyard together, and everything was perfect. Of course it was. The patio was draped in pink and blue banners. A table groaned under plates of finger sandwiches and sugar cookies shaped like rattles. There were gift bags the size of luggage and a massive balloon suspended in the middle of the yard, full of colored powder that would declare the baby's fate to the world. Jesselyn saw me first. She ran over, her belly gently rounding beneath her pale blue sundress. She hugged me tight and kissed Luca's forehead. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered. "It wouldn't feel right without you." And I believed her. Jesselyn meant well. But I also knew she wouldn't say anything if my mom made one of her signature comments. That's not Jess. She avoids conflict like it's contagious. I looked around and spotted my mom across the patio, holding court with Aunt Marlene and some of the other older guests. Her nails were perfectly polished, lipstick flawless. She glanced at me, nodded once, then went back to sipping her wine. No, hello. No, how's work? Not even, you look nice. Just a glance. That was it. I wasn't surprised. I'd gotten used to the way she treated me, like I was a little embarrassing but tolerable if I stood in the back and kept quiet, like a relative you invite to events out of obligation, not love. But Luca, he was beaming. He loved these parties. Balloons, cake, music, and people. He didn't care about the politics behind the smiles. He tugged on my arm. "Is it almost surprise time?" "Soon," I said and smoothed his hair. "Let's wait for the balloon." Because I had a plan. Not revenge, not drama, just truth. Quiet, simple truth. And that box he held so tightly, it held more than a second surprise. It held the piece of me that had been too scared, too tired, or too silenced to speak up before. Not just for me, but for him, too. Because I didn't want my son growing up thinking silence was strength. That day, I wasn't just showing up for my cousin's baby. I was showing up for mine. I knew it was coming. Not the balloon pop, not the gender reveal. That part was predictable. There'd be confetti, cheers, a dozen phones filming, and someone crying happy tears. What I mean is, I knew they wouldn't let the day pass without saying something. They never did. We were maybe 20 minutes into the party when I heard it. I was standing near the lemonade table with Luca, helping him poke a paper straw through his cup, when I caught my mother's voice drifting across the yard like a slow leak in a tire. Annoying, inescapable, and hard to ignore. She leaned in toward Marlene and said, "At least Jesselyn's baby will grow up with a stable home. 2 parents, a real family." The words weren't said to me. They never were. But they were said for me, loud enough to hear, subtle enough to deny. Aunt Marlene smirked, tilting her sunglasses down her nose. "Not like that single mom scandal last time. I still remember the look on your face when she told us. What was she, 4 months along before she even said a word?" My mom let out that short, sharp laugh she does, the kind that sounds polite but feels like a knife. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Just stood there. staring at the condensation dripping down my plastic cup. Luca didn't understand the words. Not really, but he picked up on the tone. Kids are smarter than people give them credit for. His smile faded. He looked up at me, those big brown eyes searching my face like he was trying to decode a language only grown-ups spoke. "Mom," he whispered, tugging my sleeve, "are you sad again?" That question, so soft, so simple, landed like a punch. Because yes, I was sad, but not just for me. For him. For the way these people who were supposed to love us didn't seem to see him at all. Just the circumstance of his birth, just the shadow of a man who chose not to stay, and the woman who picked up the pieces and made a home anyway. I crouched down to his level and gently squeezed his shoulder. "Just a little," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "But not for long." He nodded, trusting me without question. That made me sad, too. That he still believed I could protect him from this. That words didn't leave marks. But they do, and mine were starting to show. I watched my mom and aunt continue their conversation like nothing happened. Like they weren't dissecting my life right in front of me. My mother had perfected the art of the concerned observation. She never called me a failure directly. That would be too vulgar. Instead, she said things like, "Some people make choices they're not prepared for." Or, "Well, I suppose it's not his fault. The boy deserves better than this." It was always framed like concern. But concern doesn't make you feel like shrinking into the floor. Jessalyn passed by, catching just the end of the exchange. Her eyes flicked from me to them and back again. She smiled, but there was guilt behind it. She said nothing, just kept walking. That hurt in its own quiet way, and I stood there, nodding at nothing, my stomach clenched tight like a fist. I'd come here thinking I could be invisible, just blend in, celebrate Jessalyn, keep the focus off me. But shame isn't something you hide from. It finds you, in the clink of wine glasses, in the sideways glances, in the way no one asks about your life, but everyone talks about it anyway. I wanted to leave, to grab Luca, get in the car, and drive home where love didn't have to be earned through silence. But then I looked at the small box still clutched in Luca's hands. His mission, he called it. His surprise. He believed in it, in me, in whatever moment I was waiting for. And I realized something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about me anymore. My silence, my tolerance. Those things weren't protecting him. They were teaching him that it's normal to be disrespected in the name of family, that it's okay to smile through humiliation, that love means staying quiet even when it hurts. And that couldn't be the lesson he learned. So I stood up, took a breath, recentered myself. The balloon hadn't popped yet, but something in me already had. I was done being polite. Not angry, not vengeful, just done. And when the time came, I knew exactly what we were going to do. The balloon hovered in the center of the yard like it was waiting for permission to explode. People gathered around it, phones up, voices rising in playful guesses. "It's totally a boy." "No, I'm feeling pink today." Laughter rolled like waves, but all I heard was the quiet thud of my own heartbeat. I stood a few feet away, holding Luca's hand, the little white box still safely tucked under his arm. His fingers fidgeted with the ribbon, but he never asked to open it early. He was waiting for me to tell him it was time. That's what hit me the most. That trust. He didn't know what was in the box. I hadn't told him the details, just that it was something special, and that today we were going to share it together. And he believed me. No questions, no doubts. That kind of trust from your child, it's powerful and terrifying. Because deep down, I'd been waiting for someone to give me permission to speak, to approve my joy, to say I was allowed to be proud without apology. But no one ever did. Not my mother, not Marlene, not even myself. Until now. Luca looked up at me again with those wide, honest eyes. "Is it time yet?" I glanced at the crowd, at my mom standing stiff with her wine glass, at Marlene, still pretending to be the charming aunt when all she'd ever done was stir the pot, at Jessalyn glowing and nervous and happy. Then I looked at my son, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt ready. "Almost," I whispered. "Just wait until the balloon pops." He nodded, and I squeezed his hand. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't trying to steal Jesselyn's thunder or start a scene. I just wanted to reclaim something I'd let go of when I became a mom, my voice. When I found out I was pregnant with Luca, I told no one for the first 3 months. Not because I was unsure, because I was scared. I knew what people would say, what my mother would say, and when I finally told her, she didn't ask if I was okay. She asked who the father was. When I told her we weren't together, she gave me a look that said exactly what she thought. After that, I stopped sharing. I kept my victories quiet and my pain quieter. It was easier to survive that way. Quieter. Safer. But safe doesn't mean right. And Luca, he deserved more than a mother who shrinks to keep peace. He deserved a mother who shows up, who celebrates, who shines, even when people try to dim her. So I stood there and made a decision. I would not leave this party the same way I came in. When the balloon popped, I would let the truth out, not just the news, but the pride, the joy. Because I was pregnant again, 10 weeks along. I'd found out after Luca had gone to bed one night, and I sat on the bathroom floor staring at the test with a kind of numb shock. The fear came back like muscle memory. So did the silence. But this time, it wasn't the same, because Luca was older now. He was watching, learning. And I knew what I taught him in this season would last longer than any whisper my mother could ever make. That's why I wrapped that little onesie, the one that said, "Promoted to Big Brother." That's why I printed the sonogram photo and placed it gently inside the box. That's why I handed it to my son and said, "Let's surprise them." Because this wasn't about their approval. It was about showing my son that joy doesn't need a permission slip. That life, his, mine, ours, wasn't something to hide or apologize for. So when the countdown started, 3, 2, 1, and the balloon exploded into a puff of pink, the yard erupted with cheers. And right then, with all eyes turned toward Jesselyn and her husband, Luca stepped forward and raised the little box with both hands. "Wait," he said, his voice small but clear. "My mom wanted to give you 2 surprises today." And just like that, the yard fell silent. I held my breath. This was it. No more waiting, no more silence, no more shame. Just us and the truth. The air was still thick with pink dust when Luca stepped forward. People were still clapping, hugging Jesselyn, snapping photos of the sky. But when Luca raised the small white box and said, "My mom wanted to give you 2 surprises today," everything just paused. A few people turned. Some stopped mid-conversation. Others glanced at me with confusion, maybe suspicion. Vivian, my mother, narrowed her eyes like she smelled smoke, but didn't see flames yet. Jesselyn looked at me, startled, but not unkind. "What, surprise?" she asked, her voice soft and cautious. I stepped forward then, slowly, every part of me alive with nerves, but no longer ruled by fear. "Luca has something to share," I said, not to steal the spotlight, but to take back the ground I'd been walking on with my head down for far too long. Luca carried the box over to Jesselyn with both hands. He crouched slightly and gently pulled the ribbon loose. Everyone leaned in. Inside was a folded piece of white paper and a tiny cotton onesie. She picked it up first, held it by the shoulders. On the front, in neat gray letters, it said, "Promoted to Big Brother." Gasps. Actual gasps. Someone dropped a glass. I didn't even look to see who. Jesselyn blinked at the onesie, then unfolded the paper. It was the ultrasound photo. 10 weeks. The tiny bean-shaped blur that was already a part of us. She looked up at me, stunned. "Are you—" I nodded. "Yeah, I'm pregnant." And for the first time in 6 years, I said it without shame, without a pit in my stomach, without worrying about what they would think. I was pregnant, again, and I was proud. Marlene was the first to react, and of course, she said what most people were thinking. Is there a father this time? Her voice sliced through the silence with all the subtlety of a chainsaw. Vivian didn't stop her. She just stared at me like she was waiting for me to fold, to flinch, to retreat. But I didn't. I looked right at her. Number there isn't. There's me, there's Luca. And now there's one more. And that's enough. No anger, no raised voice, just clarity. Clean, firm, grounded. Jessalyn stepped in then, placing her hand on mine. "Congratulations," she said with genuine warmth in her eyes. "Really." She pulled me into a hug, the onesie still in her other hand, and whispered in my ear, "I'm proud of you." I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not then. I couldn't afford tears. I had to finish what I started. So I turned to the group, my mother, my aunt, the cluster of relatives who were always half interested in my life and fully invested in my mistakes. "I didn't plan to make an announcement," I said, "but I'm done being quiet about things I should be celebrating. I'm not ashamed of my life, or my son, or this baby." I paused. Not to be dramatic, but to feel the moment. I've spent years letting silence speak for me, letting people make assumptions because I was too exhausted to correct them. But today, that ends here. Not for your approval, not for permission, just because my son deserves to see what it looks like when his mom stands tall. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Luca beam, his chest puffed with pride, like he'd just helped me slay a dragon. My mother said nothing. Her lips tightened into a line so sharp it could cut glass. Her wine glass was still in her hand, but it trembled just enough to betray her shock. She wanted to say something. I could see it, a warning, a correction, a disapproving remark, but there was no space left for it. The air had shifted, the power had shifted, and for once, I wasn't playing defense. I was standing in my truth. Jessalyn pulled me closer, and Luca hugged my leg, looking up at me like I'd just performed real magic. And in a way, maybe I had. Not by making them love me, but by loving myself enough to stop waiting for them to. That was the real reveal, not just the baby, not just the box, but me, fully seen, finally heard. And nothing was ever going to be the same again. The party didn't end in some dramatic storm-off or family fight. It just shifted. People went back to the cake table. Some avoided eye contact. A few whispered, but they didn't whisper to me anymore. They whispered about me, with a new tone. Less pity, more surprise. Maybe even a little respect. Funny how quickly silence turns to interest when you finally speak up. My mother didn't say another word to me that day. She just gave me one of her signature looks. Tight-lipped, unreadable, like she was calculating what this meant for the family image. Marlene muttered something about how today was supposed to be about Jessalyn, but Jess shut that down without missing a beat. "It still is," she said. "It's about new life. That includes Amara's." And that was the end of it. Jessalyn was never the loud one in our family, but when she did speak, people listened. She hugged me again before I left, holding on a second longer than usual. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for all of it, for not saying something sooner." I nodded, not because I needed an apology, but because it meant something that she gave one freely. The next day, I got a text from her with a picture of the onesie draped over a chair and the words, "Still thinking about your surprise. Your kids are lucky to have you." I didn't cry until that moment. Alone in my kitchen, holding my phone, Luca coloring at the table, humming a made-up song. I cried because I realized I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't angry either. I was relieved that I had finally said the thing I'd been swallowing for years. Relieved that I didn't need their blessing to be proud of my life. Relieved that Luca saw me stand up, not just for myself, but for us. Because I thought keeping quiet was protecting him. I thought I was sparing him embarrassment. But silence isn't a shield. It's a mirror. And if I kept hiding, he'd think love means silence. That survival means shrinking. That family means enduring pain quietly so no one else feels uncomfortable. That's not the legacy I want to leave him. Now, he knows better. He saw me face people who tried to write my story for me, and he saw me take the pen back. A few days after the party, Luca crawled into my bed early in the morning, still half asleep, his little hand resting on my stomach. "Is the baby awake yet?" he asked. I smiled. "Maybe. They're small. They sleep a lot." He grinned and whispered, "I'm gonna read to them. I'll be the best big brother ever." And I believed him, because he already is. There's still tension with my mom. We haven't spoken since the party. I don't know if we will. Maybe eventually. But I'm not rushing to fix what she won't acknowledge is broken. For the first time, I don't feel obligated to chase the approval of someone who only loves parts of me. I can love myself whole. I don't need every relationship to be mended to feel whole either. Some things just need to be released. Some people aren't meant to come with you into your healing, and that's okay. Because healing isn't about making everyone comfortable with your truth. It's about getting comfortable with it yourself. That day, at a baby shower that wasn't mine, I gave birth to something else. A version of me who isn't afraid anymore. Not afraid of judgment. Not afraid of being talked about. Not afraid of standing alone if it means standing tall. I thought the second box would be a side note, a soft reveal, a subtle little moment. But it turned out to be the loudest thing I've ever said without raising my voice. And I'm not sorry for it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't scream or argue or defend yourself until you're breathless. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand in your joy, open the box, and let them see what they tried to bury. So no, that second box wasn't empty. It held everything they needed to know about me, everything I finally needed to show. And this time, I'm not shrinking to fit into their comfort. This time, I'm staying big. Because I'm not just raising kids, I'm raising myself too. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt like the black sheep, if you've ever stayed quiet to keep the peace, if you've ever let someone else define your worth, let me be the one to remind you, your story is yours to tell. And your joy, your peace, your healing. You don't owe anyone an apology for it. I used to think I had to earn love by staying small. But the truth is, I was always worthy, whether they clapped for me or not. And so are you. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of your strength or helped you feel a little less alone, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment below. I read them all, and I love hearing your stories too. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. I've got more stories coming, real ones. Messy, human, beautiful ones. Because life isn't perfect, but when we're honest about it, that's where the real connection begins. Thanks for watching. I'm Amara, and this is just the beginning.